In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a print and cut process in which you have something like, say, these tags, these name tags, and they're all filled with different names. What is the fastest way to do that? So let's start, and on this page here, I have the tag set up, and go ahead and size the tag to what you need for your project. And then, because it's a print and cut project, you want to make sure that the style on it, on the style panel, is set to print plus cut cut. The default is going to be cut, but if you leave it at cut, it's going to end up and it's going to print and cut, and I don't want the outline here for it. I just want to be able to see a name in the middle. So change it to print plus cut cut. The next is I'm going to make duplicates. Now you know, typical people, you're trying to fit as many as you can onto a page, and that's fine. But because you're going to need to have a little bit of room for being able to select these things later for centering, go ahead and plan to spread them out. So you might have them on 3 pages, even though you could fit them on 1 page, but give yourself some room. So when I get ready to duplicate this tag, I'm going to do Control D. And in this project, this video, I'm only doing a total of 10. So I'm going to do 2 columns and I'm going to do 5 rows. But I'm going to go ahead and spread them out because later I can, move them closer together if I need to before I actually print them. But for now, I want to have plenty of room. So this is what I'm going to do. And if I was doing, let's say I could fit, let's say I could fit, 20 on this page or something, I might again use 2 pages. All right, so the next step, before we go any further, there's some preferences I want you to change. Go under Edit, Preferences, and there's 2 preferences. On the Edit tab, click on the Edit tab, and then first of all, the first one that you want to be able, or you want to make sure is not set, is this one called Keep Objects on Mat when Dragging. It's handy to have extra room out here to work, so you might want to turn this off and leave it off. That's what I do, because otherwise when it's marked, which is the default, you can't move your shapes away from the border of the mat on the right hand side or down. Okay, they always kind of want to stick right to the edges of the mat. So uncheck that. And the other one is the arrow key increment. Now this is on your keyboard. This is how far objects move when you're using the keys to move them. Now you could change either one. Nudge is what the little arrows are on the position and size panel. These up here. That is the increment there. So you can either change it or you can change your arrow key increments. I tend to use my arrow key increment, so I'm going to make this about 0.02. Now of course that would be much higher than what the nudge is set, but again, this is just, it has to do with when I'm needing to manually kind of move some names up or down so they look correct. So anyway, so do that. And then again, you can always change them back later if you're not happy with them. All right, so we've got these here. So now then the next thing is to do the name. So I'm going to come over to my text tool, click on it, and then this is where I'm going to use this area out here. So I'm just going to click here and I'm just going to put the word name here, just anything, just temporarily. So I have the word name, and then go ahead and get that set to what you want in terms of color and the font, but don't worry about size. Size comes later. It's just about, getting the color you want. So I'm just going to use black for this project, and you can always change them all later. Again, it's just you want to get them done before you get them arranged inside all of the tags, because then otherwise you're having to go back and get them all reselected. So get that set, and then the list. Where do you have your list of names? Well, in this case, I have emailed the list to myself. So here's a list of names I just kind of made up, my family and some friends. And I have a list here. And the idea is that however you get these names, if a friend gives them to you or a customer sends them to you or whatever, you need to be able to select them. All right. And you can just select them all at once, but you need to be able to select them so that you can copy and paste. All right, so here I have my list, and also if you have a really long list, let's say you're doing 200 of them, before you do the sizing for the names, you want to know what's the widest name, because Gabriella McCauley, that's going to be like my limiting name in terms of how high I can make the letters, because I need to get that name to fit. Now that when I was doing some wedding reception cards one time, I had some that were very, very long names. They were extremely long because they had like junior, and I think they had a middle name or something. So in that case, I split it into 2 lines because I had room for it on the place card, and then I didn't let that one, a couple of those really long ones, define the length. But for something simple like this, I am going to go ahead and let Gabriella McCauley be the definition of the widest name. All right, so I right-click and select Copy. And then I come over to back to SCAL, and then right up here I'm going to go back to the text mode by clicking on this T, and then I'm going to come over right here and I'm going to click and then drag my mouse. And that can be a little tricky sometimes. There we go. I backwards drag. Just keep dragging it until this all turns blue. Then you know you can now paste your names. So I right click and I select paste. And what it does, it brings in all of those names. And let me move these some of these panels out of the way so you can see a little bit better. Now I can't see all of the names, so how do I fix that? They're so far apart. Well, here's the way to do that. Go back to your regular select mode. All right, select them, and then come down to your text window and decrease this value called leading. Decrease it until the names are much closer together, just like that. You don't have them overlap because you need to be able later to come back and marquee select all the letters individually for each name to move them over. And I'll get to that in a minute, but don't put them too close together. Definitely do not have them overlapping. So something about like that. Next, since these are names, I want to go ahead and make all of this print plus cut print. So over here on the style panel now, it's currently set to cut. And if it was set to cut, it would print them, but it also want to cut them later. So much easier to come back and set it to print plus cut print. Now they can only be printed. Okay, now as I mentioned before, we want to know what size to make this. And so because I can see my Gabriella Macaulay here, I'm going to be able to bring that over and resize this until it fits inside of that tag. So on my position size panel then, let me just go ahead and bring this all the way down. Let's make it like, I don't know, 8. So it's much smaller. Then I can see this corner down here and I can increase or decrease until Gabriella Macaulay will fit. So, looks like I need to make it quite a bit smaller. So about like that. And now then I can see that her name will fit into the tag, and then the rest of them will of course need to stay that size so that it looks the same between one and the next. Okay, all right, so now then I can bring the names back out here, and the next step is to ungroup them. Unfortunately, when you ungroup them, it ungroups all the letters. You can't say ungroup it by name, which would be really nice, or ungroup it by line. Not possible in SCAL right now, but no problem. It's not too hard to get them back together either. So I'm going to go to Object, Ungroup. Okay, and while I'm doing that, note that the shortcut key for group is Control-G, because I'm going to use that when I regroup each name. All right, so now I'm going to ungroup. Then I can just carefully marquee select. Again, you don't want to come down too far. You just want to do one name at a time. Select it, do a Control-G, and then move it. And then don't worry about making it perfect. Later on, we'll get them perfectly centered. Just drop them in here. Okay, select a name, Control-G. You got to remember to group. Control-G. And if you're into manually centering, you can, but that's not the way I'm going to do this. I'm going to do each one of them. Again, I'm doing Control-G on each one, hopefully. If I don't, then later, you'll see that when you do a centering, all the letters end up on top of one another for any given name. So just select each one, Control-G, and drop. And then for some reason it always retains that first one, kind of like my dummy one that I use, so I just delete that one. Now then I come back and I'm going to bring the position size, and here are the centering tools for position size. It's this one and this one, these two. So I select them, I've got my name, and I make sure when you select, make sure you kind of marquee select, so you make sure when you do that you get both the tag and the name inside, and then you can center. Now then the centering isn't going to look perfect. We're going to address that in just a minute. And it has to do with the fact that it actually is centered, but the descenders on the name, the Y that comes down, that's what throws it from off center in terms of just how it visually looks. And you're going to want to fix that, and I'll show you how in a minute. Okay. And remember, if you have forgotten to group any and all the letters end up on top of each other, don't panic. Just use the undo button to back up. All right, and then make sure you select just the name and do a Control-G on it, and then you'll be able to do the centering. So I have them all done now, and except for the fact that, like I said, you'll notice that say the Bob Macaulay and the Gabriella Macaulay, they look a little high. Like this looks a little high compared to look at Sam Cornell. See how nicely that looks centered. So what we do is we're just going to select the name. Right, and then I'm going to use the down. And this is why I wanted to make the arrow key kind of smaller, because I can make it just, you want to make it so that you can kind of gently move it down and it looks centered. Like that looks good to me. Okay, same thing for Gabriella. I'm just going to bring it down. And of course, this case, when you're selecting the name, you don't want to be selecting the tag on the outside. You want to select just the name. Oh, if the arrow keys aren't working, close this position size. Just close that window, and then they start working. That's kind of like a little bug that happens to be in the software for some reason. Okay, and it looks like I need to move them down 3, all of those, to make them look. Because if you look over here, like at the Brad Williams, you kind of use that as a guide because it doesn't have any descenders and it looks nicely centered. It's just the ones with the descenders that need to move. So, okay, so then once I get them all moved, that's basically it. You're ready to do your print and cut. And again, you can verify. You might want to verify with names and make sure that, yes, the name is still set to print plus cut print, and then, you know, the tag is still set to print plus cut cut. But otherwise, that's the way it works. And if you find this video helpful, then consider purchasing the Scrappy Do Classroom, because it has over 150 different videos that cover all aspects of SureCuts a Lot 5 and will make you a master of the software. Thank you for watching.